Hi, we're gonna try this again. Happy New Year to all of you that are watching. I wish you a very, very happy, healthy year ahead, wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever challenges you're facing right now. I hope that everything is resolved, and even if it's not able to be resolved, I hope you find peace in wherever you are in your journey to building your family. So happy 2018, and I'm excited because today we have a very special guest who's going to be talking to us about food sensitivities, and especially if you're breastfeeding, it's a really big topic. And Veronica's here, yay! So we've been having technical issues all morning, so I am gonna see how this works out and invite her on to chat about all of her expertise on what to do if your baby has food sensitivities. If you think your baby has food sensitivities, what do you do about it? She's the expert here, and I can't wait to chat with her as soon as I figure out how to bring her on. Oh, here we go. I think it's working. We'll give it a minute. It says we are adding. Hey!
Hey!
Oh my gosh,
Can you guys
it
hear me?
worked. Yes, I can hear you. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, good.
This is so awesome. I'm so glad this worked out. First of all, thank you so much for being here and being available. I know it's early in the morning for you. And then thank you for your patience with all the madness of the technology this morning.
Oh, no problem. No problem at all. I'm happy to be on here.
This is
I'm
awesome.
happy to not be involved in the morning routine right now. My husband is dealing with all of it.
Dan, yes. Is this the first day back to school with you for your kids?
No, my daughter went yesterday.
Okay.
But still, I don't know. Morning routine is never great for us.
I feel ya. I totally feel ya. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this because I have a very personal investment in this topic. You know, my son, so he was a micro preemie. He was born at 24 weeks and 5 days, which means, you know, he's at risk of having food sensitivities and all kinds of digestive issues, which we've had several of throughout his life. And this is something I wish I had known. I was not able to breastfeed. I pumped as much as I could. I did the best that I could, you know, but I was not exclusively providing breast milk to him. And he still developed food sensitivities. I have food allergies. He has food allergies. I mean, this is just something that I know is such a big deal, especially for moms, because we're so obsessed with feeding our children, which I totally now understand why my mom's like constantly trying to still shove food in my face, because we're just built to feed our children. I totally get it now. But this is really scary. It can be super stressful for moms who realize, oh, wait, my child might be having trouble digesting something that I might be providing, and what's going on and what do I do? And it's so overwhelming. So I would love to hand it over to you and, you know, share your wisdom with us about what can we do and how do we know and where do we start with all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, food sensitivities are really challenging. It seems to show up more in the preemies because their digestive system is less developed. And because a baby has food sensitivities in the early days, early months, that doesn't mean that it's going to carry on throughout their lifetime. It really does have a lot to do with the development of the digestive system.
That's a relief
and
to hear.
Looking.
That's a really huge,
Yes.
I feel like that's worth repeating for everybody that's watching, that just because they have it now does not necessarily mean it's going to be forever. Because that's a big fear I know that we have is, oh no, is this going to happen for the rest of their life, and how are we going to handle this?
Yeah. And most babies grow out of it. The most common food sensitivities that they see in babies start with dairy. Second would be soy. And then after that, you tend to have the top 8 allergens in there as far as sensitivities. And so these sensitivities can come through, certainly if the mom is breastfeeding, and that's who I talk to a lot is breastfeeding moms, but it also can affect babies on formula because formula is typically made out of dairy. If it's not made out of dairy, it's made out of soy.
Yeah.
And then if you have to go to one that doesn't have either of those, typically it's an amino acid formula that's been broken down to just the bare bones amino acids. But even still, depending on how sensitive the baby is, the baby can still be reacting. So
Yeah.
usually
How does that show up?
the
Like, how does a mom know that that's
yeah.
what if it's a food sensitivity and not like baby being colicky or just being cranky or
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question because that's typically what moms want to know is like, how do I
yeah.
know? Or parents in general, moms and dads want to know, like,
Yes.
how do I know what's going on here? And so I typically say that there's five main signs. The first one that most moms will talk about specifically is their baby's skin. The
Mm.
skin has a rash. The baby has a baby acne
Hmm.
that comes on suddenly and intensely, and it seems like that it'll clear up and then suddenly it'll flare back up. Or babies with eczema.
Hmm.
Babies with eczema, that's a big red flag that there's a food sensitivity going on that's actually presenting itself through the
Through
skin. I
the
mean, the
skin.
skin is our largest organ,
Yeah.
and our skin, as people say, is a reflection of what's going on the inside of us. So, skin
Oh,
is a
I love
big way
that.
in which it'll show up
Yeah.
for babies. And one of the ways in which I noticed in my daughter, so my daughter, I felt like that she was getting more colicky based on what I would eat. And I was actually on the phone with the pediatrician trying to explain it to them, and they were like, no, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't happen. They were just dismissing everything.
Yes.
I was breastfeeding her while I was on the phone, and she like was fussing and popped off, and so my milk sprayed on her face. And I was still talking to the pediatrician just dismissing everything. And I hung up, and then I wiped the milk off my daughter's face, and she just had a red rash everywhere that my milk had touched on her face.
Wow. I mean,
I
if
was
that's
like,
not a clear indication there's something there, I don't know
exactly.
what
I'm like,
is.
it's my milk.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
brings up all these
Yes,
emotions where
it
you're
does.
like, oh no, it's my milk. Am I hurting my baby?
Yeah.
I thought I was doing the best thing for my baby. They still believe that breast milk is the best that you can give your baby. So I don't want to discourage moms from continuing to breastfeed, but adjusting your diet to get rid of those trigger foods is really what's key to helping baby feel better. So I talked about one, skin. I talked about another one slightly. Another sign would be fussiness. So if the baby is very, very fussy, and depending on the age, you can see this. So babies that have been diagnosed colic, a lot of times will end up being food sensitive. It was just undiagnosed
Mm, that is
previously.
so
Um,
interesting because
yeah,
colic is something that leaves parents feeling so helpless. They just don't know what do you do with this screaming baby, and it's really stressful when you're hearing a baby at that level of intensity for so long, and
yeah,
you're not getting any answers. So this is something really huge to know that hey,
yeah.
if you feel like your baby's colicky, maybe it's a good idea to start looking at food sensitivities and see if that might be what it is.
Yeah, absolutely, because they don't have any other way of communicating, right? Like, so
Right.
if their stomach hurts, or if they're overly gassy, or their intestines, just their guts all the way through the digestive tract, right? If it's getting irritated, they don't have any way to communicate that other than to cry.
Sure.
And, the more that they feel it and the more that it's not getting better, the more that they cry and the
Totally.
more that they scream. And we went through this for months with my firstborn, with my daughter, because I was trying, like I kept calling that pediatrician saying like, hey, I think something's going on here. And
Yeah.
they're like, no, it's fine. No, it's fine. They're like, oh, did
Yeah.
she stop crying? And I was like, for like 10 minutes. And they're like,
Right.
oh, okay, then she's not colic. And, but,
Your instinct
it's
was
just part
telling
of
you
the,
there was something though.
yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
I've seen other people's babies. They don't cry this much. They don't scream
Yeah.
this much. Um, and so, being fussy, particularly if it's a newborn, I feel like it's newborns sleep so much, right? When they're first born,
Yeah.
it's almost hard to wake up a baby to feed them.
Yeah.
They're super easy to go back to sleep. They constantly go back to sleep. It's like you have to try and keep them awake
Yeah.
just to get them to feed, right?
Yeah.
So if your baby isn't in this newborn stage, those first couple of weeks, if it's not immediately falling back asleep and it's crying and it's fussing and it's kicking, to me, that's a flag. It's something to pay attention to, right?
Yeah.
And then if you start seeing other symptoms of the skin breaking out or the digestive systems, the
Hmm.
symptoms. So frequent stools, frequent poopy diapers. So they are, or frequent spit up. If they're constantly spitting up, constantly vomiting, projectile vomiting, or even if it's just dribbling out. And then the frequent poopy diapers. With my
Mm.
son, I was still in the hospital, and on the second day, he went through about 16 poopy diapers. And I
That's a lot.
was telling the doctors and nurses, they're like, oh, did he have at least 2 stools today? And I'm like, he's had like 16.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that's great. He's not going to have jaundice. And I was like, well, no, I think there's actually a problem if he has too
That's
many.
gone too far
And
the
they're like,
other way.
yeah, exactly. So again, they were like, nah, it's fine. It's fine. It's great. Your baby's not going to have jaundice. And I was like, no, I think there's a problem here, you know? And then
Yeah.
he started getting more fussy and he wasn't going to sleep. He was crying. We are having a hard time
Mm.
settling him down. And he was also wanting the comfort nurse constantly. So I had milk in. I mean, I produce milk like a dairy cow. I could fill it, feed the whole block. You know, like there was plenty of milk coming. But he still wanted to nurse constantly. He
Mm.
was literally latched on for over an hour and would not release. And so I told them, they're like, oh, that's what they do. And I'm like, no, but my milk is coming in. Like, there's something else going on here. He's hard to comfort and get
Mm.
into his sleep. So that was a red flag for us. So when I got home from the hospital, I started tweaking my diet once I had control of it. Um, the
Yeah.
last two things that I would say, so I said fussiness, skin issues, digestive issues, sleeping issues is what I
Yeah.
was just talking about with the baby. So disrupted sleep patterns for once the babies get older out of the newborn stage, they tend to only fall asleep for 15 minutes if they're laid flat
Yep.
because the reflux starts coming back up. So they wake up shrieking and crying.
Yep.
So, you know, it's not a baby that just wants attention. It's a baby that's waking up in pain.
In
So that's a red
pain.
flag.
Yeah,
Yep.
totally.
So that's a red flag. And then you can also see patterns in the symptoms. So if you're
Yes.
noticing that baby is always more fussy in the morning, then it could be something in your morning diet, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
milk in your coffee or tea, something like that. Or if baby's always fussy at night, that can
Mm-hmm.
be a pattern into what you're eating in the later afternoon or the evening, that kind of thing. Or I talked about the skin flare. So if things flare up,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, that gives you a clue. This isn't just a constant thing. It's something that's flaring up. So that gives you a clue. Well, it's something that I eat occasionally. And
Right.
that,
You know, one thing I'd add to here is just for all of you that are watching who are preemie parents, that
yeah,
preemies are at risk for a lot of this, you know, and this is something that you get a little bit of education on in the NICU before you leave, but not a whole lot. It's kind of,
yeah,
you're done and good
yeah.
luck. And I mean, like my
Go
son,
home.
right, exactly, go home, which we want to do. But you know, I know my son, as with so many preemies, had reflux, and for him, his digestive issues were actually the opposite of how you showed up,
Yeah.
how you talked about it, which is he was it was showing up for him as a
Hmm.
constipation, like severe constipation. So
Yeah.
his stomach was killing him. It was hurting so bad. And he was screaming in pain
Hmm.
from that. And you could tell he was really uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
we just couldn't figure out why until so many months later that it was, like you said, dairy. Dairy was a thing that
Yeah.
he just could not digest. He wasn't allergic to it, but he couldn't digest it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so dairy's a common one, and just one thing to clarify what it is, it's the proteins in the food, and all food has some base level protein, but it's the proteins in the food that the baby reacts to. So it's not
Yeah. Yes.
lactose,
Right.
not the sugar in the milk. So getting lactose-free milk
That's not going to
isn't going to
help.
help.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's the protein in the actual milk, or it's the protein in the soy,
Yes.
or it's the protein in whatever food, and it can be any food. Like the most common ones are the most common allergens,
Yeah.
but a person can react well, even us as adults, right? Like some people, they eat bell peppers. They don't feel good after they eat bell peppers or something, you know, like they get a stomach ache, that kind of thing. They're not reacting well to that random food. It just doesn't do well
Right.
for them. Same thing with babies, right? So if you're eating a random food and you feel like, oh, every time I eat, I don't know, apples, baby seems to flare up. Just pay attention to that. That
Mm-hmm.
that may actually be a real thing. Don't let others tell you that it can only be dairy or it can only be
Right.
soy.
Yes.
It can be
It
anything.
can be anything. Yeah. It's the likelihood of dairy or soy or something is maybe higher, but
Hmm.
it doesn't mean it's the only thing. Totally hear that.
Yes,
For those of you that are watching,
exactly.
if you have any questions, please pop them below. We're happy to answer them live while we're here. But Veronica, as we wrap this up, what are your maybe top three suggestions? You've given us so much already, but as a mom who's sitting here watching this going, oh my God, I didn't even think of this, or oh, I knew this was something that could be going on. What are the top three things that women should be doing or parents should be doing if they're suspecting food sensitivities in their baby?
Yeah, the first thing that you want to do if you're suspecting food sensitivities is actually start trying to track and log what the child is eating, or if you're a breastfeeding mom, what you're feeding the baby, and just paying attention to what's happening. Like you just basically log what you're eating, and then you log any symptoms also along with that. And I have a symptom tracker, so a food and symptom journal where you can track all of one day on one page. So you've got all the food and you've got all the symptoms there. But you start writing that down and just paying attention to patterns. That's the number one thing that you can do. To make that easier for you to see patterns, it's better if or it's easier if you, or if the child is eating solid foods already, is eating more like whole foods as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to eating packaged and prepared foods that have 10, 15, 20, maybe even 50 ingredients
Mm-hmm.
on the list. If you have something that has a really long ingredient list, it's really hard to pinpoint what it is that's bothering baby, because when you get into the packaged and prepared foods, they almost always have dairy, they
Mm-hmm.
always have soy,
Yes.
they always have preservatives, they
Yes.
tend to have wheat, right? They have all of these different things that are high likelihood
Yep.
um, items to trigger. Whereas if you're eating whole foods where you take a few vegetables and some meat or some protein and cook it up yourself, maybe you've only got 5 ingredients in your entire
It's
meal.
easier to
It's
parse
easy.
out then. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's easier to see like what are the common factors here, right? So like if you have a vegetable that's included in your meal and then you give that vegetable as a snack the next day, and at both of those within a few hours you see the same kind
Mm-hmm.
of reaction in the child, then you can tell like, oh, well, maybe it's this item,
Mm-hmm.
and that gives you a clue and something that you can highlight and track there. So I think keeping your food journal is really important. Eating whole foods, that's really helpful. And for any mom, and certainly for any mom with a new baby at home, your time is limited. So if you can cook something in bulk, I encourage you to do
Yes.
that.
Yes.
My favorite way to cook in bulk is using a slow cooker. I've got the
Mm-hmm.
biggest slow cooker I can find. I fit as much in there as I can.
Yes.
And and then I've got a bunch of meals and I can pull those up and put them into individual serving sizes, whether it's in the refrigerator or the freezer. But at least I've got an option of food that I can go
Yes. Oh
to.
my gosh. I
So
can
those are my
really
top
attest
tips.
to that being golden advice. That is so, so true. My son for years was dairy free, soy free, legume free, nut free, egg free. And so, like
Uh,
you're saying, I couldn't even find packaged foods if I wanted to because there was nothing
yeah,
available that was safe for him to eat because some of those were allergies and some of those were sensitivities. And so, for those of
yeah,
you that are watching and feeling overwhelmed by, well, how am I ever going to do all this? Please tag me and let me know because I've got tons of tricks and tips of how I've been able to figure out how to make these whole foods, like you're saying, in bulk and
yeah,
have them available so that you don't. It's not an extra load. I mean, it's hard. I'll be honest, it's hard,
yeah,
but
yeah,
when you figure it out, there is also a sense of relief, like, oh, that's why you're feeling that way, and
yeah.
now I can fix it. It's so
Yes.
helpful.
Yeah. And sometimes, a lot of times, parents, they discover their own sensitivities.
Yes.
So my husband, he had eczema that flares up on his hand. And for years, I told him it was probably attached to his diet. And he was like, meh.
Nah.
He would kind of like halfway change his
Yeah.
diet and be like, see, it doesn't matter. But we had to get so strict with my son because he's so
Sure.
sensitive, to control the whole household diet. And and then my husband saw his hand was healing. And then when he would cheat and run and go get some, like packaged food or something
Sure.
from the convenience store, his hand would blow up. And I was like, see?
Told ya.
So Yeah, he's
Yeah.
already figured out. He's figured out. Oh, okay, this is how I control the
Yeah.
eczema flaring
Yeah.
up on my
And
hands. And a lot of parents talk about that.
it's so true. And just like the emotional aspect of it is so profound that to know that one, you can help your baby, to know two, that this
Yeah.
is something in your control, is
Yes.
so profoundly important and so empowering, I think, as parents when you're trying to figure out this new little human being and who are you and
Hmm.
what do you need, to know that there are parts of it that are actually predictable when you start focusing in on finding those patterns is huge. I mean, I really personally can attest to that, of how important that was
Yes.
just for my own sanity to know, okay, I'm not going crazy. It's not that I'm a terrible mother. It's that there's actually something wrong. And
Hmm.
now I've figured out what it is.
Yeah, yeah, because sometimes you question, you're like, oh, I don't know how to comfort my baby. I don't know
Yeah.
how to bond with my baby,
Yeah.
right? You start questioning all these things about you.
Yes.
And it's like, well, no, baby is in pain because something is irritating
Yeah.
the baby, and you can change that and you can
Yeah.
fix it. And baby can be really comfortable
Yes.
and you can have a really great bonding experience.
Yeah.
And,
And you know
you
what I
know, you
love
can
about the
actually
work
put
you
them in
do
school.
and what you've shared is how much you empower mom to really trust her instincts, because you've been through
Yeah.
that. You trusted your instincts. You knew there was something wrong, even though pediatrician was saying there isn't. And I love
Hmm.
that you're so focused on empowering mom to trust her instincts, because as we all know, we know our children best, better than anybody else in the world. And really hearing from an expert like you to say, hey, I trust you. What do you see? Tell me. We're going to
Yeah.
go with that is so, so invaluable.
Yeah, I think that moms really do. We have
Yeah.
instincts, and I think that by recognizing it, we can teach our children to pay attention to their instincts
Yes.
and say
Yes.
like, "Hey, notice how this makes you feel."
Yes.
Well, whether it's an action out in the world and like
Yep.
how you're responding to that emotionally, or whether
Yes.
it's a food and
Yes.
how that's affecting you physically. But like we're not disconnected from the different parts of us,
Exactly.
and so yeah, thank you for pointing that out because yeah, I absolutely believe that we have that gut instinct, that there is
Yeah.
an awareness inside of us, and we just need
Yeah.
to be told to like, hey, pay attention
Pay
to it. It
attention.
is
Trust
valuable.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, I could sit here and talk to you for hours. I love the work you do. I love how you do it. I'm glad that we got to connect and technology worked out for us today. But, for women who are watching and want to know more, where can they find you and how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, well, one of the easy ways to find me is my website. It's simply veronicalamb.com.
Mm-hmm.
So that's lamb as in like Mary had a little lamb. Um, so you can find me on there. I have some free support guides on there. I have a video that talks about the symptoms again. It comes with a checklist. It also comes with a food and symptom journal that you can
Awesome.
download and use that to start tracking what you're seeing, what kind of reactions that you're having there. I've got more supports and things on there, but that free one is usually the best way to get started. And of course, you can find me on Facebook and on Instagram and all of that. It's all at Veronica Lamb, HNL. So HNL for Honolulu. And
Love
you can
it.
find me.
That's awesome. And I'm going to put the links below as soon as we're done here for anybody who wants to link. If you want to ask questions, feel free to comment below. If you're catching the replay, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
And Veronica and I can jump in and tag each other for answering those questions too. But Veronica, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing this wisdom. It is absolutely invaluable. The work you do is incredible, and you're totally changing moms and babies' lives. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful chatting with you.
Yeah, you too. And thank you all so much for watching. Again, if you're catching the replay, feel free to leave your comments and questions below. We'll be happy to answer them at any time. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful day. Take care.